Welcome to the Empowering Family Caregivers Show. It's Friday, January 21st. It's our second show of the year, and we have a wonderful guest today, Andrew Mellen, here to talk to us about decluttering and unstuffing your life. He is the author of this great book, and he's going to talk to us today about how we can help the elders in our life downsize and declutter and start, simplifying what we surround ourselves with. He is the CEO of Virgo Man, which focuses on helping people declutter their lives and get organized. He is also, as I mentioned before, an author and speaker, and he provides creative problem-solving techniques to individuals and businesses who find that they have too much to do and not enough time to get it all done. He's a professional organizer and coach. I could really use some of that. He leads workshops throughout the country, and his mission is to clear away any and everything that stands between you and fulfillment and satisfaction. I love that. Andrew has been an artistic and producing director of several theater and arts centers and has led seminars for the Smithsonian Institution, arts commissions, and assorted universities. His website is www.virgoman.com and andrewmellen.com, and that is spelled ANDREWMELLEN.com. Welcome, Andrew.
Hi, Susan. It's great to be here.
Yes, thank you for joining us on this snowy day in New York City.
I'm happy to be here.
Great. All right, why don't we get started?
Sure.
Let's talk about what do you suggest that people who are working with an elder interact with that elder to help them downsize and declutter and let go of broken, damaged, obsolete, or redundant items?
Well, I think when dealing with broken or damaged items, it's easier to identify what is really broken and what is really damaged. When we get into obsolete items or redundant items, that it tends to be a little bit more in the eye of the beholder. So you want to be gentle and encouraging when you're dealing with people and asking them leading questions, but helping them to get to the conclusion that, yes, this really is the fourth spatula, or this really is the third toaster, or this is the fifth down comforter, and I really don't need five. I can see that now. Because of our conversation, I can see that this is redundant and I don't need it, as opposed to this is the broken toaster, and we can all recognize that this is the broken toaster. It will never make toast again, so we can let this go. Even though it's the toaster that you got when you married my father 45 years ago, it doesn't make toast anymore, so we can let it go.
And you and I were talking before about how we just become emotionally attached to some items because they have like some type of historical or emotional significance.
Right. I tell people all the time to get clear about, I call it the stuff behind the stuff, so that you get clear about the story that you've attached to an object. Because this cup, for example, to me, it's just a cup. It might be the cup that your grandmother made you tea in every time you were sick and you came to visit her. So to you, you've got a story attached to this cup now that I don't have. To me, it's a vessel. If it's broken or chipped or doesn't carry tea anymore, I can easily let it go. You have all of those memories that you've charged this object with. So being able to recognize that to anybody else, this is still just a cup and that it's your story that you bring to the cup can help you to actually get some perspective at some distance. You might still choose to keep the cup, but now you're making it from an informed place rather than just a knee-jerk reaction like, it's the cup my grandmother used. I could never consider getting rid of it. It was hers. Now you can recognize, okay, well, if I have 19 cups, I still choose to keep if I'm going to keep 12 of the 19, this will be one of the 12 because it has significance for me and it still works. Or it doesn't work anymore as a cup, so I won't keep it as one of my 12, but I will keep it and break it up and make a mosaic tabletop out of it because I want to have a relationship to it, but it's no longer going to do what it used to do for me. So that people start to be thoughtful about how they're interacting with objects rather than just responding or even more to the point, reacting in an emotional way without any thinking around it.
Andrew, you know, this topic, and I'm so glad that you're here today, is so relevant to me and my mother right now because my mother is in the process of downsizing. She's in a larger home that she's been in for a while with a lot of accumulated items, and she's about to move into a smaller place that's better for her physically and financially. There's so much involved in helping a relative relocate. You know, I mean, so I mentioned my mother, but in other instances, you know, a lot of elders are moving to assisted living or smaller dwelling. How do you recognize when you're overwhelmed and you need to start delegating some of the tasks to outside support? I think that's hard for a lot of families.
Sure. What I often suggest people do is think about if it wasn't you, but it was a good friend or a family member, what would you advise them to do? Because again, that takes your feelings out of it, that you don't feel guilty or somehow that you're supposed to be uber responsible and you should, because of your love for this person or your affection for this person, that you should be able to shoulder an amount of work and tasks that you can't shoulder, but you feel obligated to. So if it were a friend and not you, and you saw they were already juggling perhaps a marriage, perhaps some children, a full-time career, and then had all of these new responsibilities that they had to add on top of it, how would you advise them to do it? So that often people will excuse themselves out of reasonable thinking because of their feelings, again. And I'm not suggesting that people don't have feelings, but what I'm suggesting is that when you lead with them, you can sometimes confuse your thinking. So again, if you're confronted with a tremendous amount of tasks, just the physical tasks of helping someone leave a home that they've been in for 30 or 40 or 50 years, and making all of those arrangements for their new living, the disposal, the disbursement of all of their possessions that aren't going to go forward with them, that's a tremendous amount of work, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to hire a me. You don't necessarily have to hire an organizer, but certainly whether it's somebody that does estate sales or some team of people that can support you in navigating all of those tasks, so that you don't set yourself up to fail, you don't become grouchy or start to feel like a martyr that, oh, poor me, I have to take all of this on, and there's nobody that's acknowledging the amount of work that all of that kind of thinking is certainly not going to encourage you or support you in doing it in an efficient way or a kind way. You certainly don't want to start to resent the senior that you're helping transition. I mean, and start to, in a subconscious way, start to pick at them because of what you've taken on. You want to be reasonable. And again, to return to the first thing I said, really think about if it was a good friend and you were trying to support them, how would you give them advice? And then see if you can turn that back onto yourself and offer yourself the same kind of advice.
So, Andrew, one of the things we were talking about are some examples of what happens when maybe, people don't go for outside support. What are some of the scenarios you've walked into or seen, when, things just don't go right with the whole process of,
what happens is that people become cranky. They do not make smart decisions for themselves. They don't make smart decisions around the things that are surrounding them. They sometimes don't make smart decisions about where the family members are going or what they're going with.
I think I mentioned to you, there's one family I know that basically had to remove furniture once their parent was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and they had to move all of this stuff, all these valuables, into storage, and are like paying upwards of thousands of dollars a month just to hold this stuff. And it's just, and they just can't bring themselves to, address and just confront all this stuff. So
right.
Right? I mean.
Yeah, so, to people, fine art and fine antiques that have clear provenance, that you can trace them and we can recognize that they have value beyond the sentimental value that the objects have to your family.
Right.
those kinds of objects are worth storing, but not indefinitely. You would want to get them to an auction house or someplace where they could either decide amongst yourselves, well, I will keep that painting and that chest of drawers and that commode, and you take these things, and we all decide what we're going to take, and then beyond that we're going to send everything to an auction house, or just send it all to an auction house and get it someplace where somebody who is neutral can determine the value of it and actually start to turn it back into cash for you, so that you can move forward. You don't want to sit on it, and certainly if it doesn't have clear provenance and it isn't fine art, it's just a painting that your Aunt Betty made for you that you love, but nobody would pay anything for it. Those kinds of things, again, you either want to determine what you're going to keep and then disperse the rest of it, or just let it all go. But holding on to things and pay, I am a huge proponent of no outside storage. The only time I suggest that people use outside storage is in a temporary fashion, when you're clear that we're moving between apartments and we have 3 months, or something like that, where it's a clear timeline and you're certain that there's a finite end to it. Because otherwise it just lapses into one more thing to deal with. People do not want to go to the storage room and sort through stuff. It's gloomy and unpleasant in those places. So you have no motivation to go, and the only time that you have some external motivation is that once a month when you get the bill and you think, oh, I won't pay this one more month. You write out the check, and then it slides past you, and another month comes. So outside storage is really not a good idea. And
thank you for saying that. Let's talk about siblings, and let's talk about the issues that can come up between siblings and potentially competing agendas.
Again, when there are multiple people helping an elder or a senior, or they don't necessarily even need to be elder, they just are somebody who's transitioning from one living space to another living space. It's really important that everything be transparent and overly articulated. I can't stress that enough, that people have to talk and they have to tell their truths to each other. This is not the time to keep secrets. If there are historic secrets in the family, now is a good time to get them on the table, so that there is no misunderstanding that, Mom always wanted me to have this cup. Well, that's not what is written down in the will, or that's not what, I just talked to Mom last weekend and she specifically said I could have the cup. You want to be really clear with each other, and then remember that what you want to do is get along. If on the other side of this process, having a relationship intact is really important to you, then that's the guiding principle. So that when you're making decisions, if it turns out that, well, you really want the cup because, and it seems to matter more to you about the cup than the pen, then perhaps in this instance, I'll take the pen, you keep the cup. And then in the next one, Yeah.
We have a couple of minutes left, and I want to ask you about what can we do when we know that downsizing is necessary, but the elder involved does not agree? What is your suggestion here?
Be gentle but firm. It's always challenging when you're dealing with a shifting power relationship where they used to be, perhaps they had control over your choices and your behavior, and now you're in the unfortunate position of having that role reversal. So you want to be gentle, but you want to be firm. Obviously, if you can find the way to get them to buy in, where they can really see, again, without feelings, if you can make it sort of a math equation where they can see the cost benefit to them, that they can see strategically how this transition will actually make their life better, and they can feel that, you'll have a much greater success.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Andrew is the author of Unstuff Your Life, and he can be found on virgoman.com and andrewmellen.com. Thank you so much for stopping by today. This was so helpful, and so helpful to so many families who are going through this.
You're very welcome, Susan. It's great to be here. Great to be here.
Join us next Monday next Friday at 2 o'clock the same time.